Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Brad Dude. Brad has over 40 years and he has been in more than 30 territories and countries around the world. He has provided leadership training, organizational development, program evaluation, workforce training, coaching, and project management services to U.S. government agencies, public and non-profit organizations, and private sector enterprises. He specializes in training, group facilitation, process improvement, team building, and strategic planning, especially for newly promoted team leaders, supervisors, managers, and executives. Brad brings a leadership and management background to his consulting, having served as a senior staff member for the Peace Corps in Micronesia and Samoa. He has also worked in similar positions for other organizations in the Washington, D.C. area, as well as New Orleans, where he now makes his home with his wife, Sue. He has one son and 3 grandsons. So without further delay, let's jump right into this awesome conversation with Brad. Sit back, plug your earphones in. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to chat with you today.
Awesome. So, Brad, could you tell us a little bit about your journey? I know it's a long journey because your bio said over 40 years. Maybe you could condense it a little bit for us, but just tell us how it is that you got to where you are today in your own words.
Yes, it is kind of a long journey. It gets longer every day, it seems like. As you said, I started out doing management training for the Peace Corps overseas in a variety of countries, mostly in the Pacific and then in the Middle East. And that got me into working for Westinghouse. That brought me into the Middle East, doing some project management for we had USAID projects in West Bank and Gaza, and that got me into the training, more in the project management and coaching and counseling, and we were doing a lot of executive coaching on management and leadership kinds of issues. Some colleagues of mine started our own consulting firm in the D.C. area, and that's where I got to go to Jamaica for the first time in the, kind of the middle to late 80s, doing a management analyst course.
Nice.
Ministry of Planning, and we at that time, and it was great. And so I got to 4 different trips down to Jamaica, and participants were some of the best I've ever had all over the world. So as I got older and wanted to jot down some of the things that I would do that seemed to be fairly successful with my participants and clients, I started to write books. And so I've now got, I think, 6 books. They're up on Amazon, mostly dealing with leadership and temperament and how new leaders view their world and try to help them out that way.
All right. Excellent. So one of the things that piqued my interest to have you on our podcast was your most recent book that you have published called Quick. Could you share with our listeners a little bit about that book and what is it all about?
Sure. It's called Quick, I Need to Be a Leader in 30 Days. And it's a title that is focused on newly promoted or newly hired managers, supervisors, and leaders. What I found, for example, the last 9 years I've been teaching a leadership class for NASA just outside of Washington, D.C. And I found that although when you're in the classroom face-to-face, it's great and people seem to get things. But with training, training with organizations, even in government, is often the first thing that's cut. And so participants might go through one 12-day course or something, and then we don't hear from them again. And they maybe come back or write or ask for coaching. And we felt there was a need to encapsulate in a handy guide of what somebody can do every day, because a lot of the questions are, well, but I have the title of leader or manager or supervisor, but what do I do? And so I focused on what to do over a 30-day period, and the idea was to help newly promoted folks hit the ground running so they can have some success. And I had Scott Blanchard, who's now the president of the Ken Blanchard Company. He wrote the foreword to our book, and he mentioned that over 50 million millennials are working in North America alone, with 10 million in management, with, he estimates, about 2 million new managers every year. But, the first year is very important, and people usually don't get trained during their first year. So there's a lot of failure by meaning not meeting their own goals, expectations of their company aren't met. And, we thought that's the time to really help them and have a guide to help them be successful. So we put together this book and basically said, how do you be a leader in 30 days? Well, I've got 4 steps. First was to understand some of the basic principles of leadership, and I subjectively picked the ones that I felt have been most successful for new managers and leaders. Mm-hmm. And then step 2 was to look at their followers, learn about who are those folks that are looking to you for guidance. Third step, practical applications. You can't just read a book, put it on a shelf, and say, I'm a leader. Mm-hmm. You got to go out and do something and practice. So in my book, I have practical readings and exercises, and especially the 4th step, which is have some reflection and support time. And that means identifying a coach, whether it be your supervisor or a mentor or a friend or a colleague or your minister, whoever that is, that you can bounce some ideas off of. And ultimately, they can give you some feedback as well on how you're doing.
Right. Now, as it relates to who are your followers, if this is an employee in an organization, is it persons that look up to that person who now is the manager or leader? Is that what you mean?
Yes, but it's more than that. When we talk about, Ken Blanchard says it, the best. He says, lead from wherever you are in the organization. So you don't necessarily have to have a title of manager, supervisor, leader to exhibit leadership behaviors.
Right.
And so whoever that is. And so in the book, we are considering clients, people that report to you, people that you report to as well, are all potential followers.
All right. Okay, so those are some really, really good strategies that you can employ for persons, as you mentioned, who are transitioning into that management/leadership role. Now, leadership is so critical to customer experience. And there's a saying that I have, that mud flows from the top of the stream. When you find something that's going awry in an organization, a lot of times it's not at the tip of where you're looking at that the problem, probably evolved from, but more so, you need to look at the leader and the structure of the organization and what's happening at the top. And so I wanted to speak a little bit about that for us. What if we have an organization where the leader doesn't see the importance of customer experience? They're not able to connect the two. They're not able to connect the financial and, the feel good. Because a lot of leaders, I think, still believe to this day that customer experience is just about making the customer feel good. And they're just not able to see that translate into a very tangible and, financial way. How as a leader, as a manager, as a business owner over the past couple of decades, have you been able to get those leaders on board to recognize that customer experience is so important?
It's a challenge, and there are many, many examples where leaders just don't get it because they are trapped into the idea that their position power is what's important and not so much their customers or their followers. So we've done a lot of different ways. It depends on the openness of the leader. Oftentimes, I know I worked with Department of Energy, their nuclear division, for a while, and we had a leader, and oftentimes these are political types who get in for whatever reason, not necessarily their leadership abilities, mm-hmm. and they just don't see it, and they just it's checking the box. Oh, well, I've had a training, check. I've had a meeting with the customer, check, and things don't go the way they should. What I typically have done is do a series of interviews with the direct reports of such a leader to start to identify what are the true challenges in the organization. I really like the idea about modeling the way and trying to talk to the leader about trying to be more of a exemplary leader. But also, I like the idea about challenging the process. This is we have it in the book. This is the Kouzes and Posner 5 practices of exemplary leadership: modeling the way, inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, encourage the heart. Well, I like to do a lot of process improvement with folks. And so, we'd get a whiteboard and actually start to draw a schematic of the customer service process and who's supposed to do what to whom. And I don't do it as a group. I usually bring in parts, because people oftentimes in such a process are doing, if we say it's a 5-part process, I bring in the folks who are doing part 3 and let them do some drawings and say, oh, this is supposed to happen, that's supposed to happen. And they go away, and we bring in people from the first group, for example. So we end up with kind of this gigantic map done by different groups. And what we find is there are inconsistencies. Expectations are off. Somebody expects this group to be able to give them this kind of information, and it's not happening. Mm-hmm. So then you kind of try to bring that leader in to show him or her what kind of mess they're in, and have some ideas, some strategies for helping them improve that process.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Okay, Brad, could you share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
Well, the website I like the most is called life-changingworkshops.com. And this is out of Kripalu Institute. It's based on a new book come out by Ken Nelson and some others, a variety of authors on it, called Designing and Leading Transformational Workshops. I think for a new leader, outside of my own books, I think that's a really good one. And that's a great website that they have as well. Another one is called ascenddevelopmentgroup.com, ASCEND. And this is run by a friend of mine, Jeff Whitehead. He and I did training at NASA together. He does outdoor experiential leadership workshops. And it's a very interesting website to show videos of how he interjects leadership into rope climbing and things like that.
Oh, very nice. Okay, so we'll have the links to those 2 websites in the show notes of this episode. I know you started to allude to some books just now when you were mentioning the tool, website, or app, but do you have maybe 1 or 2 books that have had the biggest impact on you? It could have been a book that you read a very long time ago, or even a book that you read recently, but it really has resonated with you.
I think there are several. I think one was called Why Him, Why Her by Helen Fisher, Dr. Fisher. I'm the co-author of a new model on looking at temperament called The Basic Elements of Temperament. And a lot of our work, my late partner, Jim Harden, and I did that together. And Dr. Fisher kind of did similar kind of research, but on a larger scale, dealing with some of the dating websites to look at how temperament influences the way we look at other people, the behaviors of others. Now, Jim and mine, we're not looking at dating. We're looking at how leaders look at their employees and their managers and their customers. So that book, Why Him, Why Her, is a real good one by Dr. Fisher to kind of give some basics as well. I also like John Carter's work out of Harvard, What Leaders Really Do. He's written a number of books on leadership, and I just love those books. It really gets me thinking about leadership more.
Got you. All right. Thank you for sharing. Now, we have a lot of listeners who are business owners and managers who feel they have great products and services, but they lack the constantly motivated human capital. If you were sitting across the table from that person, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them to have a successful business?
Well, the one piece of advice, it's hard to have one, but, trust is a big issue. And in my leadership courses that I've done in the past, trust is a big issue, and that gets into a variety of things, including how to model the way and not making promises that you can't keep and being consistent and things like that. But I probably would spend time with a leader talking about temperament, my experience has been the difficulties that folks have with being professional, being productive, has a lot to do with their experience with their manager or their supervisor. When they're not getting along, when they feel they're not being listened to, that is a demotivator. And people leave organizations. They don't leave them because of the job or the work. It's usually because of the relationship with their manager or supervisor. So I would spend some time, I think, trying to talk about how they are viewing the world, how they look at their position, power. You know, there's three kinds of power. We have it in the book as well. The lowest level of leadership is the position power. It's having that title. And it seems that that's what everybody wants to be. If I was only the boss, then I would solve all the problems. You know? And then they get to be the boss and they realize, it's not as easy as I thought. But they say, now I'm there. Now they got to do what I'm telling them to do. So that means your followers are following you because of the negative consequences if they don't, that they could be fired, they could be assigned to lousy jobs, what have you. Mm-hmm. So it's the lowest level. And that's a power that doesn't stay with you. When that manager leaves the organization, that power doesn't go with him or her. It stays for the next person that's coming. So it's not even a power that you take with you. Yeah. So that's the lowest level. The second one is that power of competence. And that's where followers follow you because of what you've done for the organization, because of what you've done for them. So that gets you into a mindset of, gee, if I want to be competent, I need to be really sharp and look for opportunities to help my employees. And the third, the best kind of power that a leader can get is the power of a positive reputation. Mm-hmm. And that's where, no matter what your title is, people follow you because of who you are.
Yeah.
And they'll do whatever needs to be done if you ask them because of who you are and what you stand for and the values that you bring to the organization.
Nice. Very good. All right. Thank you for sharing, Brad. Now, Brad, could you share with us what's the one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? It could be something that you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Well, I am, during this pandemic, not a lot of training was going on, especially not a lot of leadership training. I've done a few Zoom workshops over Zoom with 50, 60 people. And there's just not as many as there used to be. So I've had a lot of time. And so I'm writing a novel called Finding Eden. And it's based on kind of my travels throughout the Middle East and the issue about asylum seekers trying to find a better life. So I'm writing a novel, just about done. So I'm very excited about that right now.
All right. Sounds good. All right, Brad. So our listeners would have listened to this podcast and they're really intrigued with your work and what you do and also your book and, just a lot of the concepts and principles that you'd have shared with us throughout this conversation. Where can they find you online?
Yes. Braddude.com is my website, and it's got all links to all my books on Amazon. It's got a more explanation about temperament. It's got a free little quiz that you can take for yourself and allows you to put your email in so you can keep up, and we'll just shoot you updates on what's happening with our leadership and our new books. So that's braddude.com. Very easy to find. I also have LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn and in fact, I just did a number of articles on LinkedIn that kind of summarizes one of my books called 40 Tips for Figuring Out Your Boss. And so it's a way of trying to help new supervisors and employees kind of some do's and don'ts about the different kinds of bosses that they may have.
All right. Very good. So we'll have, again, those links in the show notes of this episode if our listeners want to tap into those amazing resources on Brad's website or through his LinkedIn profile. Now, Brad, we always like to ask our guests at the end of our conversations if they have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, they will tend to revert to. It kind of helps to refocus them or get them back on track. Do you have one of those?
Actually, I do. The one I kind of refer to now and then, not every day, but sometimes, it says, "Don't let yesterday take up too much of today." And that was written by Will Rogers. Yeah. So the idea is, don't get bogged down with what you've done in the past. Today's a new day, and we need to go head on into the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Brad, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to hop on this podcast with us today and share some of the wonderful insights and just, information and knowledge that you've gained over the years to pass on to our listeners to help them to become better professionally and personally in whatever capacity or role they play for their own organizations or even ones that they run on their own. So we really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was and very enjoy a lot of enjoyment for me to link back up with my friends in Jamaica.
All right. We need to get you back here for sure. All right. We just want to remind our listeners, feel free to hop onto Facebook and join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. And feel free to follow us on Twitter at NavigatingCX. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.